One of the things I wanted to ask you, so we talked about your substance use. At what point did you begin to realize, if you did, that it was an addiction?
With cocaine, it wasn't an addiction. Like I said, I tried it when I was earlier on, and I didn't have many dates that indulged. So, like, when I was escorting, I limited myself to how many clients I had. And so, if I had, on my roster five, one did cocaine, so it was like that. But when it came to feeling like I had an addiction, if I didn't want to do it, I didn't do it. And then I'm a person, I'm really picky, like even down to the cocaine. When I buy drugs or alcohol, I want the best. And so when I found that the quality of the cocaine, honey, when you can't breathe and your nose is stopped up, that's not coke, okay? They dilute in the cocaine and stuff, and I was like, I'm wasting my money. And I worked too hard for my little bit of coins. And so that turned me off to that. So it was just, by the grace of God, I do have to give God all the credit, my inner power, to have the ability to just turn it off. I've always been a person, I'm like, oh, I want to try it. If it's for me, it's for me. If it's not, it's not. And so that's how I lucked out, if I may use that word, when it comes to cocaine. And the same thing, stopping using crystal meth. You just get to a point that you're just like, I'm tired, and it no longer serves the purpose in which I started out for. Like I said, it was always something that I did while I was escorting, and I always partied alone by myself. And so when I found out, I wouldn't say addiction, but I would say losing control, that would be with crystal meth, because the falsehood that it creates around you, as far as in your relationships, your own reality, things become so mixy, may say, and foggy. It's not crystal clear as the drug is. It was really hard to overcome the shame of it. And for me, that's when I felt like, okay, if I'm feeling shame, then maybe it is an addiction. But it wasn't to the point that crystal meth is a little bit different. It is kind of a day-to-day drug, but it wasn't, if I didn't have it, then like I would do crazy things to go out and seek it. I'll just wait until the person was able to re-up. So that's why I never really called myself having an addiction to these things, because I was able to stop and stop completely. But it was a situation, people, placing things that kind of triggered, or, me just wanting to do what I want to do, drugs, sex, and hip hop, as I call it. I don't say rock and roll, hip hop. You live life once, and sometimes you just do things that you shouldn't do, but yeah.
When I was partying in New York City on weekends, and I was actually making big money going to school, and so I would have a lot of money to blow, it wasn't, I didn't really see the effects of it, besides like, blowing money and feeling like crap the next day. But it's like, you eat, you sleep, you get over it, boom. But when I came back to Albany and people started doing it in their homes, and people, like, I seen like a whole different side of people. Because down in New York City, like with the people I was with, they shared. It was never about who didn't have, or it was just like, you shared, you were good. But once I got back to Albany with that, and people and their addictions, it got very, very stressful. People were always fighting. People were always arguing over, mind you, a $20 bag of cocaine. And like now, like 20, I'm 28 now, so I would say 26-year-old me would be laughing at those people, because who fights over $20 bags of drugs? It's just crazy. So, but after so many times of being high and being around fighting and people like hoarding and people acting funny and crazy and doing crazy shit, it kind of turned the enjoyment into like, it just turned how it was for me in the beginning. It began to turn into something else up here in Albany. Because like I said, once again, my social group, a lot of people did it, but it wasn't, it just, the priorities weren't right. And when I say priorities, I mean people actually earning money to be able to splurge how they want to call their own shots. People didn't do that. They just wanted to get high because their friends were getting high and didn't have the money for it. So it just would like ruin, it just really ruined the whole quality of the experience. So my addiction kind of got stronger, you know, when I came back up here, because I would chase that feeling of wanting to be, you know, dancing and feeling good, and just you're that bitch, you know, you want to talk and hold all these conversations, and you just want to go here, go there, you know, you miss that, you know.
I can't tell you the exact time frame, like how long I was using. I guess if I had to guess, have my best guesstimate would be, I think about a year's time did it become that I had to do it more often. And then because we had gotten engaged, we moved in together. So I moved into his apartment because his mother and his brother, who lived next door, moved to upstate New York. And so I moved into his house, which was his mom's, and we took over that apartment. And that's where I remember really starting to feel the effects of physical withdrawal when we didn't have it. And it was then from that point on that even though we got married, that continued. And obviously then in another year or so, it was at the point where we were having difficulty managing bills because it had gotten to the point where we couldn't afford our habits.
My next question I want to ask you was, when you were, you know, deep in your addiction, did any loved ones ever notice any changes in you, like physical, mental, behavioral, etc.?
Yeah. So I was really far gone. So I think there were people that weren't really sure. I think I was able to sort of keep up appearances. And, you know, I was always a little flaky in my 20s. So when the shit really took hold in my mid to late 20s into my early 30s, right? Because like there's a whole 10-year chunk where I was like really in my active addiction in a fierce way. But as I mentioned, it was a progressive disease. So, you know, where I went from doing it, you know, here and there, and then it became a weekly thing. And then, you know, the amount of days that I was using would expand. And so the next thing I knew, you know, and if you know anything about meth, it's like a little bit will go a long way. And, you know, you do a little bit and you're up for days, right? And so like literally up, no sleep, no eating, like all you want to do is, all you're fixated on is like, what is the next thing that's going to bring you pleasure, whether that's more drugs or more sex. And so I was constantly chasing, you know, and, you know, so 2 or 3 days of no sleeping, no eating. I think the most I was up, the longest stretch was like 9 days. And let me just say that there is nothing normal or natural about being up that long. Like your body is designed to need rest and sleep and regenerate. And when what's fueling you is this insane substance, right? The speed, nothing good can come of it. I'm grateful to God for the way that I have been spared from certain things. So I will say that it did affect my mental health. You know, there was some paranoia attached to it. There was like some bordering on hallucinations. Like I would see the shadow people. You know, sometimes I would get stuck looking out my window, looking up at the rooftop, and like I swore that there were people up on the rooftop, but there was nobody there. I was imagining that shit. Or, you know, if I had drugs on me and I thought I had drugs on me, and I you know, sometimes I would think that the feds or the cops were following me, or like, how long has that Con Ed truck been out there doing work? Like, oh, okay, that's the feds. Like, you know, like it's crazy shit that I would think.
No, not with the cocaine. That was, like I said, when I was younger, and I haven't partaken in over 10 years. As far as the crystal meth at the end, well, I wouldn't even say at the beginning. My now husband, he was very concerned, and he's one of the reasons why I stopped. And because the concern, it wasn't the fact that I was indulging in crystal meth. It was the fact of, is it safe? Who are you doing it around? Because that drug did take me out of my comfort zone and it started putting me around other users, you know. And then at that point it becomes not safe because you no longer have control over the environment, sort of say, you know what I mean? And so that was his concern. And I felt that he was so genuine when he expressed that. You know, he said, I'm not here to judge you, I'm here to support you. I just want to make sure that you're safe. And then that's what made me, you know, say, you know what, I need to go ahead and start reeling myself back in. I had so much shame, I didn't want to get caught out there because the rumors were already out there. People were already whispering. And so to answer your question, like, did anyone come and try to intervene? No. A lot of times people don't. And you'd be surprised. People don't say anything. It's like, girl, they'd rather talk behind your back. And I did a live about 2 years ago entitled Making It Crystal Clear. And that was the 1 year anniversary of my sobriety. And I was talking how I felt so disgusted with people. I was like, you guys say you love me so much, but child was like skin and bones missing. I had a couple of people that was like, girl, you look like you're dying, you walking sticks. But everyone else was like, oh, hey, girl, when they did see me, if I decided to step out in public. But no one checked on me, no one, even when I was letting people know, you know, okay, I'm dealing with crystal meth. Oh, okay, girl, well, thank you for being honest, but it won't know, are you okay? It wasn't no follow-up, it wasn't no, you know, anything. And maybe because I didn't need that. It was a battle that I did have the strength to overcome, and I bless God for that. But it was something I had to go through, and I want to wrap this little segment up with this. For a long time in my life, as being a woman of God, being called and chosen to spread goodness and kindness, oftentimes, for a long time, I didn't have a testimony. I didn't have any tests. And so for me, with the HIV, the substance use, I had to go through those periods in my life so that I can have a testimony, because there's a target audience that I have to reach. And so I feel like it was in my destiny and purpose. That's why I was able to make it out with my right mind, with love, make it out intact, make it out no more sicker than I was when I started. I'm still undetectable. My health is in good shape. I rebound 100% physically and mentally and emotionally too, from years of substance abuse. Like I said, my main substance was really alcohol. That was like the really, girl, drinks all the time. I'm in debt because of alcohol. But nevertheless, all of that today, I stand free of it, because I'm determined. And because, like I said, I want to live, I don't want to die. And I understand my purpose. And the light is so bright now that I know at any moment, if I was to indulge, I know it will be the end. From doing research, you know, when you do stop cold turkey, because I like literally one day was high to the moon, next day, no more. If you do happen to relapse, it can be more detrimental than you just having to continue usage, you know, for years. People like, they've been a crackhead for 20 years, how they still alive? But once you stop, and you know, you have some time, it can be worse off if you reintroduce those chemicals. So me being in the medical field and knowing that, that's something like, girl, I'm not even gonna risk it. It'd be one drink, girl, and liver failure or something like that, you know, so. No, ma'am, and then with them lacing drugs and stuff, I'm good.
My mother and my father knew. My father tried his best to curve me from that lifestyle, because he himself was very big in that lifestyle back in his day. So they already picked up the signs. My dad first, because I lived with him. Then my mom, because she's so familiar with the streets, she knew, you know, and then also I began to do it with different people in my family, word of mouth, you know, and then I was grown by that point, so it wasn't like I really had anything to hide, like be scared of, nobody's gonna do anything. But just, you know, me being comfortable and doing it like with certain family members, that allowed my parents to kind of like see, and my siblings as well, to see that like oh, Lala does that as well. And so it was a great disappointment to quite a few people, because, you know, nobody wants, especially like when you have dreams and aspirations, nobody wants to be hindered by that. or you don't want that for somebody. So yeah.
My loved ones. So my mom and I were estranged for a really long time. My mom read a journal when I was 19, and I was 17. My mother read a journal when I was 17, and she found out I was gay. And after a series of very dramatic events, she asked me to change or leave. So it was after that time, I was introduced to meth in 1991 when I was 19. And it didn't, like all the other drugs that I had done before, it was not something that I liked very much. Particularly meth, it was so intense. And it made me really, really, really horny, like beyond. Like it really, like I said, it fueled my sexual compulsion. Several years went by, and somehow, so I was on and off of reconnecting with my mom, and my mom was one of my biggest triggers, right? Because she has never accepted, and when there were times when I felt the need to connect to my mom, and I'm an only child. My mom was a single parent. So I had this need to connect, to be mothered, and I would pick up the phone and call her or make contact, and she would say some shit that would spin me out. And I'm not blaming her for anything. Like, I don't blame her for my choices or the way my decision making, or the way my disease controlled my life. I would hang up the phone, and I was the one that made the choice to get up and go and cop. But I would spin out. I'd be on the phone with her, and she would say some shit that she would push a button, and I was off to the races. And so there was a wedding. This girl that I grew up with in Long Island was getting married, and I was in the middle of a run. And I was supposed to go to the wedding and then the ceremony, but I was, with some boy in my house, twisted. And eventually, the day kept getting later and later. So I missed the actual service. And I said that I would go to the reception, which was out in bumfuck Long Island somewhere. So I remember I hired a car service and paid, at the time it was like $60 to take me out somewhere in Long Island. And when I showed up, I remember my mom sitting at this table with her friends, and I had lost so much weight. Like, I was like, and I swore I was sexy because I got dressed, but and my gauge was like, as long as I have abs, if I look in the mirror and I have abs, I know I look good. Never mind the fact that my face was gaunt, that you could see my rib cages, that I was a stick. And so I remember showing up and seeing the look on my mother's face, and her two friends, that one of them who knew me went since I was a child, and this look of concern, and just being, and my mom kept saying, "Oh my God, why are you so skinny? You're not eating. And, I'll be honest with you, I was high. So they kept putting food in front of me, you need to eat. And I wasn't trying to eat. I wanted to be there, show my face, and get the fuck out of there when it was over, so I could go back to, my drug-driven debauchery and, drug-driven sex. And, I still recall the look in my mother's eyes, and I don't know what she thought. I don't know if she thought I was sick. My mom's not stupid, so I'm sure she must have seen that. She must have had some idea that it was drugs. She never said it. She never actually said, "What drugs are you on? Oh my God, you need to," But I knew that I never wanted to see that look in my mother's eyes ever again. So I never allowed her to see me high again, somehow. But in the process, I would make plans with her and I would stand her up because I was high and I didn't want her to see me that way. And, you know, I remember one time, like I kind of mentioned that maybe I would meet her but I didn't confirm with her. And she was so excited to see me that she got on a train from Long Island, and I never called to confirm. And I was like, so, okay, well, and she got on that train and she waited for me at Penn Station in front of that McDonald's for I don't know how long. And then eventually when she got back, you know, she called me and she's like, you know, you didn't show up. What happened? I was there. And I felt so bad that all I could think of to do was, you know, take another blast, you know? So it was, I was definitely caught up in the grips of my active addiction. And I'll tell you that, you know, I lost everything.
When I talked about my mother was also my enabler, but because she never wanted to see me in pain, people got to the point where they noticed physically, even though, yes, I also did cocaine, I also did crack. We called it freebasing back then. But it was the heroin that was my choice. If I didn't have heroin, I couldn't do anything else. So, but it got to the point where it was a lot of stuff at once. So it became more like a $200, $300 a day habit. But they noticed the changes in me physically. I got very skinny. I was always very petite, but I was skinny. And so also, of course, as many of us do, full transparency always from me, you know, started stealing from the family. Little parties, get-togethers. I went into a pocketbook here and there, a few dollars, just enough to get me through like the next day or the night to get through to the next day. And so I noticed that not only did they notice physically, but they started to hide things from me. So they knew something was going on. And also in the midst of it, I got diagnosed with HIV. And so I had been I guess, the most upfront with my mother about what was going on. And she would try as much as possible to help me get the money to at least be not sick, because I had 2 children. So she didn't want me to be sick. And even though I had brought my children to her house, or my ex-husband and I did, when we lost a beautiful 2-bedroom apartment that was my grandmother's. It was only $174 a month. It was something unheard of, which was rent control, full control. So when we took it over, it went up to $678 and we couldn't pay the rent. When the lights went out, I brought my kids to my mother's. And so my mother never wanted to see me sick and in pain because she had seen it. So she would give me enough money just to get by so I wouldn't be sick. And I could participate with my children and her and going to school pickup. And, you know, I had lost my job over my addiction as well.